Welcome. Welcome to everybody. Might be a little delay. All right. Welcome. Thanks y'all for being patient. Once again, here we are. This is my Ask Me Anything, called it Ask Kristen Anything, in case you've never met me. My name is Kristen, and yes, I am the person behind the Black Urbanist. I'm the host of Defying Gentrification podcast. I also have a fiber arts company called Chris Pattern, which is, all of this is me and self drafted. And I want to invite everybody who is listening to send questions. I should be live on YouTube and LinkedIn, my Facebook group, as well as StreamYard. And then, of course, those of you who are watching me on Instagram, you can also put questions in the comment. I think there's also that little Q&A function. So if you want to put something there, you can. If you do not bring questions, I'll just talk for about 45 minutes today. You might notice usually we're live at noon Eastern, so we're live a little bit earlier this week. I have interviews I'm going to be recording for the podcast. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to the podcast yet, somehow magically, or even if you're a few episodes behind, go ahead and listen to the podcast. You'll catch up. And of course, I'm just looking at my little humidity bang here. I had a chance to go out to Maryland Sheep and Wool yesterday, and that's a good way to get started. I did promise, if those of you who did not bring questions this week, and actually well, let me change my banner below. I'm actually gonna switch it to Patreon because let's see, there is a Patreon. No, I will find. I have multiple ones here: StreamYard, and of course, those of you on Instagram. I'll pin a comment so that you can find out how to support me. In fact, let me go ahead and do that now. So those of you who are watching on Instagram, I'm just grabbing the phone. And for those of you who are live on other channels, I'm just looking at my phone to let my IG folks know how you can support me and support this work. So that I can continue to really do this steadily. Those of you may not be aware, but I have been doing the Black Urbanist in some shape, way, or form now for about going on 14, 15 years. Of course, this was like I came up in the blogging era. And in the blogging era, a lot of us who didn't have traditional access to spaces, we had a way to write our way in. Our web journals, our public journals allowed us to break into spaces that we would have never broken into before. And now you really see that even more. Those of you all who are younger than me at 38, and especially if you are in college right now or you are early career. Many of you have been able to be here for you. And I want to congratulate you. I want to congratulate my graduates. I want to congratulate those of you all who are in your first or second year postgraduate. And you're taking that time because it's May and you're thinking back to, hey, how has my year gone? How has my life gone? So I did want to theme today's talk back / ask me anything with more of a detailed version of what I do to defy gentrification personally. This might end up actually becoming a bonus podcast episode. So you might be listening to this in the podcast, and this is an edited version of what I talked about on the live stream. And I think going forward from now, I might just start. So from this point forward, I'm gonna term this like I might do a bonus episode on this. So I'm gonna just try to be a little bit more structured. So once again, I'm Kristen. I started the Black Urbanist in 2010. It was not a class project, but it was influenced by what I was learning in my graduate studies. It was also influenced by what I was seeing and what was missing in the planning books and in the world as it related to how a person like me, and at the time I was so deep into the closet, there were cobwebs. So that wasn't a factor. And I didn't understand that chronic illness and disability do matter. Like, people aren't disposable. I'll admit that. I'll admit that I'm a recovering ableist. I'm a recovering homophobe, queerphobe, and here I am. Those two things are key parts of who I am. And I'll even say that, especially as somebody who's on the place of the color spectrum that I'm on, I've had the ability and I've had the privilege of even being anti-black, and anti-black fervently. So this was over time. First, it started out, I wanted to just be, prove to the world, hey, world, I am an urbanist and I'm like those urbanist people. And you can, charging, let's see, lots of shaking here with those of you who are on following me on Instagram. So you might lose me a little sooner on Instagram. Either way, uh, I wanted to prove to people that I was worthy of being in these spaces. But now I realize this is just my story. This is who I am. This is and it's worth having a conversation about what it's like to be in spaces as a Black American, as a person who was raised feminine, raised to, assigned feminine at birth, but has realized gender is a little bit more complicated and a little bit more fluid. And honestly, I like to call it, my gender process is more of a decolonization process, because I've never really related with okay, we're just gonna hope that Instagram doesn't go. If you lose me on Instagram, it's gonna phone off. But uh just being able to relate to these spaces, and really at first I thought this process was gonna be more of, okay, I need to prove, and I realized, okay, growing up in North Carolina, growing up with family that's engineers and teachers and people working in the mills and people working in call centers, and still people like that had land passed down, because oftentimes if you're not in a city, that land isn't as desirable, so it's not like there's that pressure for land to be taken. But of course we know that's also, there is a version of rural gentrification. Heirs property tends to be the thing that comes up, but it's the same idea, the idea that Black folks only get to have land as long as white folks don't want that land. And that's pretty binary. And one of the other things I've discovered over the years is that depending on where you live and depending on where you were able to settle as a Black person, you've gotten access to tools and opportunities. Whereas I, have my things I was born with and my tools and opportunities. Others do have different ones, and those are related to land. And so, yeah, there are a lot of us who are landowners. There are a lot of us who have been able to be landlords. But one of the things that's been kind of weighing on my mind is, and one of the things I personally do, that's probably one of the first things I personally do to defy gentrification, is just bringing up that we need to be thinking about this, that we're not all the same. But even though we're not all the same for real, when you're looking globally in a global economy, certain people from certain places are valued more than others. That has been the case for generations, for centuries. And really, that has been the pinpoint and the pinnacle of why chattel slavery even worked in the first place. So already we're dealing with the endpoints of chattel slavery. And if for those of you who are like, well, slavery ended and it's not, well, think about all the waves of segregation, discrimination, all the people who like you are like us as long as they're not taking up space. Like, even sometimes your jealousies, like say we're in the same design studio and I have a better model and your model sucks, and you want it, and I'm assuming you're like a white straight male and you wish that your model looked like mine, and the teacher's fawning over me, and then all the things that come up deep down, there's a jealousy involved. And then likewise with me, my jealousy for you looks like, okay, well, maybe I had the better model, but maybe the teacher's favoring you because they assume you're going to be this genius, you were born a genius, you were born this person. And so those things do show up. And that's why I wanted to kind of shift this project from just being a Black urbanist to define gentrification. I really wanted to just really stamp down on the economics. Assuming that if we ever do get to a post-racial world, we will still have the economy. And that's why being post-racial, because the race as a social construct is an economic construct. So if we're going to get there, we got to really think about our economics. But day to day, thinking about macroeconomics is heavy, and it's heavy for a lot of folks. And I understand that. And that's why I wanted to spend some time in this live stream, as I did when I was with the podcast episode this week. Now, in the podcast episode, I went more into like things that I need. Like, I need, I like having Southern food. I like having access to a library. If I'm going to go to not just a church, but even like a Sangha or some other sort, even if I went to like a coven and we were doing like a new moon ritual for the new moon coming up like tomorrow, I would need to know that you all felt like I belong there and you weren't freaking out that one, I'm Black, because that's still an issue in some spaces. And then some people love to think, oh, well, you're like light Black. You're people do still have that energy around being non-threatening. And so sometimes I use it to my advantage. If I feel safe enough, I'm going to challenge that thought process in the room. So there's that. I need those spiritual spaces. I need, even if it's just, Coven in the woods. And then I assume like, if you've been following my work around this and around the creation of the eventual Black Queer Feminist Accessible Index, which is still coming, I'm still working on it. Like any research, and especially independent research that is not being done within an academic environment, or at least traditional academic environment. And of course, right now, me as someone who supports the divestiture movement fully, and if I had gotten the invitation I had to come to Columbia this time this year, I would be like, hey, students, I support y'all 100%. I'll come to your encampment, but I will not come inside your classroom. That's just the best. That's the best course. Because even when I came inside that classroom, y'all seen that one picture. That man is looking at me very, very ugly. And I'm going to be truthful. I can't not be truthful, because that's another way personally. And I've been saying I'm going to seg into the day-to-days. And so let's get into it. Here we are, day to day. What do I do to defy gentrification? And those of you who are just joining, you got here just in time for me to get to the day-to-day nitty-gritty of what I do to defy gentrification. Number one, you see here, I'm laid out on the couch. Like, last couple of lives, I've been able to like go live here in our apartment. And yes, we spent a nice little sum on a nice, comfortable couch. So yes, those of you all who are going, like, if you can't get rid of the workload, or if the workload and the one thing you got going for you with this workload is that good salary, make sure your home is full of creature comforts. Now, we're in the process, we're getting ready to declutter. What you don't see off camera is all the, well, I mean, you see some of it. You see some of the artist stuff. You see the pillows that Les has sewn for fun. For fun. Let me make that clear. This is a for fun activity, and that's another way we defy gentrification. Really immersing ourselves in doing these like fiber hobbies. Like, as you see, I've adorned myself in a whole suit of crochet in the colors that I've liked. Now, this shirt in the middle is from Target. It's one of the few things that still fits me at Target, because I've come to believe that Target no longer wants you if you're not spending. Fight me. But I know some of y'all know that Target ain't Target for clothing in a lot of ways. Now, I haven't been in there recently, but of course, not all Targets are created equal, and not all Targets have everything you need. So we talked big box on here on this live stream before, but yeah, day to day, both of us really have I mean, we have been hitting up the big boxes. We've been hitting up Walmart's pitiful fabric section, and with food going up, and with one of us just being with me right now, effectively doing this Defying Gentrification podcast and platform creation, as well as more of my fiber art full time, Walmart's been the place. And that's the thing when we think about how for many people, they've created it so that divestiture from oppressive structures, oppressive companies, oppressive people, it's almost impossible. Guess who delivers the quickest of the fast food places? And yet it's that one named after her chicken. Guess which one also settles on my stomach the best? When I'm having my COVID flares and I'm out in public. So, yeah, a lot of what we have to do to defy gentrification won't make sense. And it's definitely the reason why we need to end it. Like, I say eradicate it because I feel like it's a disease. Because if we really want to make some headway on making sure we don't repeat the things, like, yeah, right now we waited so long to dismantle the highways. It's become a premium to rebuild. Like, there's more of a market reason around tearing down highways and rebuilding them than there is like a social justice one. Now, yes, this is no shade to the work that the Transportation Equity Committee has done at the U.S. Department of Transportation. I do think that there is a desire to do better. There is lived experience of what it was like to not have highways, and how the communities, Black communities specifically, and sometimes in some cases, communities of the Latinx diaspora, which could be Black, white, a European from like Spain, or mestizo, or native folks that were native to Turtle Island, and the various names that native names for Turtle Island, as well as Asian folks, that uh, Caribbean folks. No, the Caribbean is way more, even more diverse, and they kind of handle that a little differently. And that's the other thing. Like, just I one probably a number two thing that I've been doing to defy gentrification is I wanted to get better at my Spanish, and not that Spanish is the only language; it is also a colonizer language. But being able to go and communicate and delve deeper into more of our histories. Now, I've studied, I'll study Latin American culture now for probably over 20 years. Spanish was the language I took in middle school, and in Guilford County schools in Greensboro, like you chose your foreign language at seventh grade. Now we did a rotation where we got to rotate through all the other languages. So I did a wee bit of French. Um, but actually, and I don't even remember if I did French. I think even when we were on the sixth grade rotational wheel, which this is a hyper specific way that we did middle school in Guilford County, North Carolina. And some of y'all may be familiar with middle schools where in the sixth grade, your electives are actually a rotation instead of picking your hard electives in the sixth grade. They let you rotate through the electives and decide which ones you want to pick in the seventh and the eighth grade. So I actually, that's why Spanish was one elective. And then I know I did art. I know art was one of my electives even way back then. And of course, I continued on in high school, making sure that Spanish and art was always in my and music. Um, 2 full years of choir in middle school, and actually only two in school. There is a long convoluted reason why I didn't finish my music in high school, and of course that's music's always in my back pocket. The fact that I love spinning records, and coming up with playlists, and I'm very specific about playlists, and getting out to the few concerts I can. That's really in my back pocket. And that's one thing that I could probably monetize. I mean, I have a halfway decent singing voice that I don't really use. I do have a guitar in here. I have a keyboard that's at my mom's house, in my room at my mom's house. And I could definitely use all those things and leverage all those things, and don't. But that leaning into the music has definitely helped. And performing arts is probably going to join fiber arts as one of the things that I do day to day. Something else that I do, and I want to address, yes, we absolutely have a car and a car payment, and yes, we do park it and we pay all those things reluctantly, but I'm not going to sit out here and not say that I don't understand the logic, but I do understand the logic. But day to day, outside of long range planning, far too many people would be completely homeless, not just houseless, but with nowhere to go if they did not have a private vehicle to live in. And so many places are now banning overnight parking and living in your vehicle. Like, so what are we really doing here? Do we really care about ending homelessness? Do we, I mean, one minute some people want to be so market focused on it that we can't, we we can't really like redetermine everything. Like that that part we need to address like front and center. And so I had tried to, well, here's the thing. I had tried to go carless when I first got to DC after being in Kansas City. I drove my car to Kansas City and I really kind of went car like that. You know, part of my work with Black Walk KC, of course, we're promoting being able to live um, bicycle and pedestrian focused life. And of course, a lot of that advocacy movement, especially as I've moved on from the day to day of that, has been focused on like traffic violence. That means when I am in my vehicle, I am not treating I know I am in a machine that could cause life changes. There are certain things I will not do in said vehicle. Yeah, my vehicle, my motorized vehicle gets me from point A to point B, but when I can, oftentimes I will leave it parked or I'll leverage. Okay, one of the things I love is that at least here in DC, even when we have a grocery store in town, we do have a deck, we have a parking deck, and we can park for free at the grocery store. And that helps me. Like, I also have like a rolling cart. Sometimes, like, if it's Safeway, that's like literally right on the other side of a set of buildings, I'll roll myself Safeway. If I want to go to Harris Teeter, I get in the car. And that's any Harris Teeter, the one at Navy Yard, or if I go across the bridge to the two that are like in like the Crystal City. Well, that was technically Potomac Yard. And of course, you know, I go to Potomac Yard. And yes, I can technically get on the train to go to Potomac Yard now, but before then, and even now, it is a hike. I have to take my wagon. So yes, mobility devices are one way that I defy gentrification. From my private vehicle, motorized vehicle, that was easier to get than any of the apartments I've tried to get, both together and solo, as well as having a rolling cart when I get ready to go to the grocery store. We do try to plan meals, and sometimes, yeah, we buy certain things at certain stores, and we lean on fast food. I mean, we gotta eat, and in order to and needing to eat, you know, I'm not a perfect diet person. Thankfully, we don't have like a special urbanist diet. We're not as stringent about the food that we eat as we are with like where the placement of buildings and everything. And I think we have to be mindful of that. Like, yes, many of us in this generation are starting to end the harms that were done by previous generations who insisted on a certain way of doing design and planning. But in revamping ourselves and in resetting ourselves, we do have to have some transitionary steps. When I'm on like a project team doing public engagement, one of the things I try to get into every project like that, and it's been a minute since I've been on a project team. One of the things I like to do on project teams, like we love to talk, we love to draw maps, we love to have these meetings, and some of us are feeling good because now we're having childcare and we're having dinner or lunch or whatever meal period it is, if we're doing it over a meal period. Some of us are patting ourselves on the back that we actually go to the festivals and we do our public engagement at festivals. That's probably the best way to do public engagement, to be honest. Go to the community festivals that are already established. Or if there is no community festival, establish one and let that be the outreach. Or, you know, meet people where they are. Meeting people where they are is exactly what we need to do if we're in the defy phase. Now, of course, many of you who are at the point where you're setting up that need to be thinking about infrastructure, access, and care, which I've talked about in episode 3 of the podcast and we'll be harping on, especially as we get into like the actual course. And yes, those of you, if you're interested in like working with me and like creating like a playbook and a plan, an individual one where we like spell out like where you are going, like, okay, these are apartment complexes that you can live in. These are places you can go. I invite you. I'm trying to figure out how I want to collect interest for actually having the course. You know, in lieu of having the course, started doing these Ask Me Anythings instead of doing the course because I realized I launched a course. I wasn't getting any intake for it. And yes, it does have to be a for sale course right now, unless you are an organization that is interested in partnering with me to bring this course to this organization, bring my training, pay for the workbooks, pay for the creation of the short term and the long term plans, because effectively the fight gentrification is a short term plan and eradicate gentrification is the long term plan. Unless you already are further down the line and y'all just playing in our faces and sitting on something that you can just do immediately. Do the immediate thing, do the tactical thing. Like the work of tactical urbanism is even beyond just the cute little Adirondack chairs. It's okay, we could our our city has a budget to continue to fund transit without a fare gate. Let's remove the fare gates and let's figure out how we don't need fare gates anymore. And if there's issues with people that just live on the train, let's figure out where they need to go or what they need to be able to thrive or why they're living on the train. Everything has a why, y'all. Like just because somebody is living in a tent, unemployed, underemployed, doesn't mean they don't have a purpose or a reason, you know. So I want to challenge everybody, and this is kind of a shorter live this week, because I'm getting ready to go into doing some interviews and finishing up some things. And of course, we're an hour early this week, so I'm thankful to see that some of y'all have woken up, or maybe not in case. Well, I know out in the West Coast you might be waking up with me a little earlier. You're definitely catching me in a very early hour. Many of you all, it's an early lunch here on the East Coast, and it's not even quite lunch yet for those of y'all in the middle of the country. And of course, if you're watching me in other time zones, I love y'all. I love y'all for making me part of your dinner. Uh, I'm glad I can be here. If I'm comforting you in the middle of the night. And that's another thing. Gentrification is a global phenomena. The economy that we have is global. The oligarchy is global. This destruction of certain places, right now, obviously the intensity in Rafah, the intensity in the Congo, there was bombing that happened in the Congo over the weekend. And a lot of that is tied to economic interests and who gets to be a person, who gets to decide to do things. At this point, it's out of hand. It's not about faith. It's not about humanity. It's about money. It's about control. It's about power. And so one of the things I do is, yeah, I spend a lot of time here at home. I increase my walks, swinging on the swing, as y'all saw in last night's craft email. That was really fun. And it looks like I'm looking outside and I'm hoping that we'll get some sun. I'm about to actually fix my hair. You're getting the raw version of my hair and the humidity, and having gone to a yarn festival. You're also getting me kind of just barely woken up. I did decide, this almost came live from the bed, and I do, just like I have a very nice couch, we bought a very nice bed too, for those days where my joints are flaring up. Oh yeah, I do take my medications. That I'm also active in groups that help me do a lot of things off label, just so that I can have a quality of life. Um, and I pay attention. Like I didn't want to wish long COVID on myself, but I just treated it like a possibility. I've had very serious stress reactions in the past from being involved in this work over the past decade and a half. And so I kind of knew, I was like, okay, I need to treat my body well. I need to relax my body. My body needs to be, I'm sorry, y'all. I'm just fixing trying to fix my battery situation here on Instagram, but you're still seeing me on. Oh, thank you for the person on Instagram who said there's nothing wrong with my hair. I realize for those of us, for Black women, like we are very, very, very stringent about like how it looks. In many states, the Crown Act is not a thing. We've had young folks who had to cut their dreadlocks or their locks. We've actually maybe just calling them locks, because we're glorifying the beauty of how our hair locks together and creates these beautiful long waves and ropes of hair, our kinks and crinkles. Of course, I have a stylist. I had a stylist. I'll just say I had a stylist. That's the other thing. My stylist is moving and I'm adjusting to that. But that was the other thing. And one of the other things I did want to address, like gentrification is taking away a lot of spaces of joy and peace for communities of color. Pay equity is also taking away, lack of pay equity is also taking away those spaces, because many of us are forced to try to like hold up a power system many of us are forced to do certain things, especially if you're looking at over six figures in an area that's not like the tech industry. And of course, the tech industry just laid off people, and the tech industry has fired people for speaking out against being part of our modern day apartheid system. Not just this whole situation where Google workers are fired for speaking out for Palestine. I mean, the supplies that make our computers and everything come from that as well. So that is what we are, what I'm, what the platform is working on. That's how I'm getting through gentrification, how I'm doing it. It's I spend a lot of time working on my art. I spend a lot of time reading books, and those the suburbs is just what's holding me down. And we do need to ask ourselves that question. Those of you who are watching who are urban planners and you are pulling out, like, talk about hair, you're pulling out your hair because of why so many people, just it seems like so many young people of color are still excited about their first car. I mean, how many of them are loud and exuberant on Metro, and they're not hurting nobody, they're just loud and exuberant, and they feel that unsafeness. How many of us who are more of adults, the only paying job is security, or especially here in the DC region, is security in a building, or security on Metro, or security XYZ. Like, how is that the easiest job to get? Like, how many of your folks that are serving your coffee and everything are either living overcrowded in a row house long after they wanted to live there, or they're living 20, 30 miles out with the hope that they can get to public transit on time? They're looking at 2 and 3 hour transit rides. We cannot plan for without talking to our colleagues across local governments, across communities. We define gentrification is what we're doing with mutual aid, and the actual true spirit of mutual aid, where it's okay, somebody has a thing and somebody has another thing, and we pull ourselves together. And that goes across whatever the tax designation is. Because if you look up the history of what the tax designation is, and I know usually I have my sources and links, but today I just kind of wanted to go a little raw. But Google the progressive era and try to Google. I mean, I know I'm trying to break myself from saying Google things, because as we know, Google is not, no, they are not on the side of liberation. They are letting go of people who are. And even when you go on the search engine and you type in things, you're getting a lot of links that don't necessarily make sense. A lot of links that don't work. So I want us to, one of those things that I'm mindful of is that. But the day to day is, eating what I want to eat, playing with my fiber toys, taking walks when I can. And yeah, Les and I will pile in the car, our little Honda Fit, and we will go to the suburban stores and we will stock up. And then we'll come back, and when she's not on site, and of course today she's in the office. I mean, obviously y'all are watching this in the office and looking a couple cubicles over. She's there. Wave at her. Be nice to her. Please don't be too hard on her. And please, this is the reason this is called actually Ask Me Anything, is that I would love your questions. I'm going to actually wrap up a little early today since I'm recording 2 podcast episodes. And I'm a little slightly under the weather, a little slightly tired, but I appreciate y'all who have come on here an hour early. I appreciate y'all who have real questions to ask. And I appreciate y'all who know that I have something to say. One thing I want to leave us with, I want to challenge us. One of the first ways, something that's often said in revolutionary and radical circles, and it's been probably spelled out a lot on these campus encampments over the last few weeks, is that revolution starts in the body. It starts on the inside. It starts on how we feel. It starts on what our divine giving, like those of you who believe in a divine source or a divine presence guiding you and guiding your work, or even just your own. For those of you who are more agnostic or secular humanists, you're sitting with just who you are and your principles and your morals and ethics. And that's where it starts. And unfortunately for our many of our ancestors, our white ancestors, like their morals were black people are terrible. We're gonna ruin them. We're gonna destabilize them. Same with our Native American and really all over the world. Like we've had so many battles where people have decided, I don't like this person. I don't like that their crops are looking better. I don't like that their wife or wives, we're talking about that kind of era, look better. I'm going to kill them. I'm going to sleep with their wives. I'm going to sleep with their husbands. I'm going to just be a chaos monster. That's really, in a lot of ways, so many things that root in our society today come from our ancestors not having good practices. And for those of you who believe that we are reincarnated and we're living past lives, we're coming back to the earth for a reason. It's like if that's the theory, if that's your spiritual theory, and there's some lessons in that even for those of us who don't subscribe to that. But if we are coming back over and over again, why not let this be the one time that we come back to the earth and we do this the right way? Why not let this be the one time that we do right by people? Let this be the time on earth that we do right by people and we do well for people. So with that, I know some of y'all had just joined the live. I had to do live this week a little short because I'm getting ready to record podcast episodes. But bring your questions, bring your comments, especially those of you who are watching on the horizontal platforms. I can put those things up on the screen. And those of you who are watching, I pinned on here. If you want to support the podcast, you want to support this work, patreon.com/Kristen E. Jeffers is one of the easiest way to do it. If you are a Substack subscriber, Substack has paid subscriptions turned on. Now, everybody gets the same amount of content, but being a paid subscriber at any level just gives me a little extra boost of support. And I appreciate every bit of that support. And I see that on the first days of the month when those patron checks hit and all the money is distributed. So I appreciate all of that and all of your support that way. And please listen to the podcast. I'm getting ready to do more podcast episodes, obviously, today. And I'm really excited about that. And yeah, definitely reach out. If you want to work with me one-on-one, if you want to be on the podcast, I'll include that link in my recap email. Those of you who are on the email, that's the other thing. When I usually will email out this live stream and I'll note a few articles that I either touched on screen or things that might help you with thinking about what I talked about on the live streams, Monday live streams. And usually we are live at noon, and we will be going back to being live at noon on Mondays. At this point, I forgot to block out that noon slot on my calendar, and then I looked at the time zone of the person. I was like, okay, I'll just leave it. But we are normally noon on Mondays live stream. Podcast comes on Friday. If you want to stay up late on Thursday night for the podcast, or if you're already not in the same time zone and 12:01 Eastern is not late, then that's when the podcast comes out. So 12:01 Eastern time on Fridays is when the podcast comes out, and I generally record them in the middle of that. And then on Sundays, usually right around 8 o'clock Eastern, I usually write a little photo essay of the week and talk about the things I've crocheted or the art places I've been to or some like lessons. Kind of like a Sunday, kind of reflecting on Sunday being my spiritual day traditionally, as well as going into Monday and kind of the traditional line of Monday being a motivation day. This is kind of motivation Monday as well. For my Instagram followers, all of our little traditions on this little site that we built over the 15, 16 years that Instagram has been a thing. And yes, I have been there since day one. Some of my first Instagrams are popping up as memories on Facebook. And I've been on Facebook almost since day one. Definitely in that second wave of the college edition. And I was an early adopter to Twitter, and it's still gonna be Twitter because of that. And not as early on LinkedIn because I was a student, but definitely got on there probably in the first couple years. YouTube, I remember when that hit campus. So I'm in a unique place where I'm remembering how this social media revolution has worked. And as I just said a few moments ago, I think if I'm back here on this earth to be a better human than some of my ancestors were, if this body's the body I'm supposed to be in, and I'm leaning into this work, then that's what I'm aiming to do. So I challenge you, do not feel guilty for resting, especially if you're in a marginalized group, especially if gentrification is biting you. Then rest. That's your resistance, and showing up accurately in the world, and going to work and saying what needs to be said, whatever that job is, and raising your children differently. All those things are revolution. All those things matter. And yeah, next week we'll be right back here, noon Eastern daylight time on Monday. Come with your questions, or just come to listen to me talk back to you about something that's on my mind, a little bit more of a rawer take than I do on the podcast. Believe it or not, those are still edited. Well, of course, you know that the music's there. So anyway, take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful Monday, and I will see you next time.